Hello Internet, your friendly neighborhood game machine here. And today I'm about to talk about a subject I haven't talked about in years. I've mentioned this subject, but I haven't talked about this subject since I'd say my first 100 subscribers back in the day. Wrestling. Let's explain something here, okay? Wrestling, of course, is not what it used to be. Wrestling at one point of time was real. All the injuries were real. I mean, some of the injuries you see now and what you see of WWE can be real. Some of the injuries, yes, can be real. But back in the day, wrestling used to be real. Wrestling used to be good. And wrestling used to be in competition with not just other wrestling foundations, but it used to be in competition with even Monday Night Football or any type of sport at that matter. So why am I talking about wrestling today? Aside from the fact that I am very upset about the whole situation with China and the fact that WWE has a lot to do with this bull, I really just wanted to talk about wrestling and the fact that not many people talk about it the way it was back then versus the way it is now. Now, the way that I got into wrestling was through my grandfather. And if it wasn't for my grandfather, I would have never been able to have met Ric Flair when I was a kid. And Richard, as he likes to be called, Richard Flair was just a dream come true for me to meet. Now, I understand the allegations that went with him back in that time frame, and plus the fact that people call Richard Flair a woman beater. But he is one of my favorite wrestlers. And it was just an honor to finally shake the hand of, the Nature Boy. Now, I know my wrestling good too. I didn't start off in the whole SmackDown Raw thing. I started off with my grandpa's VHS tapes. And when I watched these VHS tapes, I watched, stuff like Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Hulk Hogan, Iron Sheik, Gorgeous George, Andre the Giant. I watched a lot of pay-per-view type things that he recorded off of his old television. And at the same time, he used to tell me stories about how he would go to certain wrestling organizations, their pay-per-views or whatever you would call it back in the day. And my grandpa got to shake hands with the likes of Hulk Hogan. He got to shake the hand of Andre the Giant, Ricky Steamboat, and things like that. My grandpa was a big wrestling fan. And you could tell by now, in 2016, wrestling is not what it used to be. Wrestling is a shadow of its former self, while its former self is also a shadow of its true greatness. See, it started off with Vince McMahon's father. And then Vince McMahon, he started off as like a ring announcer or interviewer per se. And basically he had, also a commentary sidelines thing like, people of the likes of Jerry Lawler and, Jim Ross and people like that have now. You would have never thought that Vincent Kennedy McMahon was just a side project per se when it came to his father. Vincent Kennedy McMahon Sr. is the founder of WWF, or the original wrestling foundation of, WWF. And This is going to be unedited, so I'm probably going to be saying a lot of filler words like and now and stuff like that. It's just because this is actually a very tender subject for me to talk about. Because when I was younger as well, I lost two of my favorite wrestlers that just so happened to be best friends, a certain Guerrero and certain Wolverine, just to watch certain things I say. And ever since those two specific wrestlers died, I just quit looking at WWE the way I used to. Now, I understand that a lot of the changes that happened with wrestling had to do with Linda McMahon and the World Wildlife Foundation. And I'd say it was around that time when wrestling started to just become entertainment. Plus, I miss the likes of when Triple H was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the Blue Blood. I missed when John Cena was actually a bad motherfucker. I remember when Latino Heat used to come out with China. And I loved every single segment with them. And I even remember, when people like Sergeant Slaughter or Mick Foley, The Undertaker, and just a lot of different wrestling names came out of the back room and came and did what they did best. Physically beating up on each other while wearing tights. It's kind of funny when I look at it like this. All it is grown men wearing tights, beating the mess out of each other. Sounds like the old gladiator days, except with a soap opera mixed in it. But from people that have seen my tribute wall, which people have, you would know that I am a fan of CM Punk, I'm a fan of Eddie Guerrero, I'm a fan of ECW, and I'm a fan of the $1 Million Championship. And the $1 Million Championship has a lot of specific fond memories to me, because I always liked the cocky, narcissistic bastard that was Ted DiBiase Sr. and his, butler Virgil. I remember that. When it came to ECW, everybody knows that technically the first ECW champion was Superfly Snuka. And this was before it was called Extreme Championship Wrestling. It was called something else. I believe it was East Coast Wrestling back then. Wrestling just isn't what it used to be. And I just thought I would touch base on that, because I haven't talked about wrestling in years. Usually I talk about wrestling unofficially in front of my friends, or, to the closest people that I have to the YouTube community. I don't talk about it that much because it's just not what it used to be. I don't watch wrestling anymore. I used to watch wrestling every night when it used to come on Mondays and Fridays, when it was Raw and SmackDown. When Eric Bischoff was the, general manager of Raw. When Stephanie McMahon was general manager of SmackDown. I remember those days. And they're never going to come back. No matter if I say that, oh my God, they're going to do a Rock versus Stone Cold, at the next WrestleMania or something like that, just for example. It's not going to be the same as it used to be when we were growing up. We're never going to get the old school days back. We're never going to get, a certain Latino Heat and Wolverine back. We're not going to get the, eighth wonder of the world. We're not going to see a female WWE champion that's actually not a Barbie doll. We're not going to see the stuff we want to see. We're going to see what the company wants to see. No matter if there's voting polls or anything of that nature. It's just an illusion. Wrestling's not what it used to be, and it's never going to be what it used to be. I still remember two of my favorite promotions back in the day when wrestling was actually good. One of them was a supermarket brawl that happened with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Booker T, where they literally brawled in an actual supermarket. So that was kind of funny. That was one of my favorite moments there. Another favorite moment of mine would be when there was a feud going on with John Cena and The Undertaker when John Cena was the Doctor of Thugonomics. And at the end of the promo, it had John Cena pissing on a gravestone that had The Undertaker on it. That was a good moment. I remember that. Plus, not many people would remember, if they think about it, that, you know, John Cena had a sidekick back then. He was called BB. Real name, Bull Buchanan. You know. Also, not many people would even realize that the first ever Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant match. Andre the Giant was not feeling well that night. Hence why he let Hulk Hogan do what he did to him. I remember the Montreal Screwjob, where it was Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels. I remember when the original DX came into play. I remember when the NWO started making their, you know, runs. And I'm not talking about the stupid little, you know, side NWO projects. I'm talking about the original three, which was Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Jesus, man, and Scott Hall. Scott Hall is a subject that kind of gets me emotional. Sorry, guys, because I love Scott Hall. You know, Scott Hall was an amazing wrestler back in the day, especially when he came as Razor Ramon. Razor Ramon, the bad guy. I remember the ladder match that Scott Hall, you know, Razor Ramon had with Shawn Michaels. First ever ladder match. And why not let it be the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, to be the first one to do that match? Plus, when you think of Shawn Michaels, you think of DX, you think of the first ever ladder match. You remember also the Iron Man match that happened with Bret Hart. I could go on forever with wrestling, just talking about it. But this isn't a vlog. This isn't a rant. This is me remembering WWF. And it still is a tough subject for me to talk about because it's not what it used to be. And it's never going to be. No matter what people say these days, it's never going to be what you want it to be. That would just be too easy. You may get lucky and have one of your own personal prayers answered, you know, by the company, but in their own way. Not even of you asking for it. They'll do something just to get some popularity. But wrestling is not what it used to be, and I'm sticking to it. Leave in the comments below what you think about wrestling these days. I'd like to know. I might do another video on this subject again. I don't know when. I still have to get enough courage to actually talk about it. Because wrestling used to be everything to me. And now, no. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This is Onyx, and I'm signing out.